Welcome back, everyone, to SANDCAST, Beach Volleyball with Triborn, and once again, solo episode with yours truly, Travis Mewhirter. Tri is focusing 1,000% on this weekend's AVP qualifier in Huntington Beach, and so you're back with me. And per usual, we have a lot to cover. We have the end of the NCAA season, which I'm now beginning to recognize it's sort of this shift from spring into summer. So the NCAA season, it starts at the end of February, freezing cold at Southern Miss for some, and then it ends for everyone in Gulf Shores. And Gulf Shores was spectacular. It was amazing. And again, I said it on last week's podcast, if you haven't been to Gulf Shores, I cannot recommend it enough. This was my first time going in a coaching capacity. I hadn't been in 10 years. Last time I was there, I was playing in my first open tournament with my boy Sean Rannells. And we ended up making the finals. I cramped out. Wouldn't have mattered. Would have lost anyway. But then coming back from a coach's perspective, it's really cool. They do a great job. Alabama Birmingham actually helps set it up. So UAB, shout out to them. The NCAA does a wonderful job. It's just it's a really cool setup. It's a really cool culture that they've built there. It's special. And it's cool to see when there are special things being made in the NCAA and in sports in general. And so I can't recommend it enough. And I got to give a massive, massive congratulations to good friend and phenomenal coach Hector Gutierrez. When he took over TCU first season, goes 0-11. And slowly but surely he started compiling the pieces. 2020 gets a commitment from someone you may have now heard of, Daniela Alvarez, who took a little fifth place finish at a small tournament called the Paris Olympic Games. She comes back with her partner, Tanya Moreno. And if you're Hector, if you're TCU, there's nothing you'd rather want than it being 2-2 in the finals against LMU. And it comes down to a third set with Tanya and Daniela, the best team in the NCAA. Daniela, the best player in the NCAA and was awarded as such. She was the player of the year this year, up against Anna Paloya and Michelle Schaefer, who, credit to them, took the first set and pushed TCU. And that's really what you wanted your ones to do, is to give yourself the breathing room to win one of the next two sets. Give your teammates the breathing room so hopefully someone else could clean it up first. End up splitting 2-2, comes down to that third set with Danny and Tanya, and it was a 4-1 switch, and then 4-1 switch, so it's 8-2, and it became just a matter of time. And happy for Danny and Tanya, really happy for Hector. Had a great time playing fours with the TCU coaching staff throughout the week in Gulf Shores, and it's just been a long time coming, and it was a big hurdle for Hector and TCU to get over because they'd had one glittering regular season after another and just continued falling short in Gulf Shores. And then whatever demons they had to exercise, they were exercised this weekend. They played exceptionally well. LMU also played exceptionally well, came in, won their first round, took down USC in the second, took down top-seeded UCLA in the next, made their first final. So happy for John Mayer, who was the AVCA Coach of the Year. So historic season for LMU. They were ranked number 2 at one point in the year. That's the highest that they've been ranked. They won their 6th straight conference title, which is a record at LMU. No other program in LMU has ever won 6 straight conference titles. And I mean, speaking of building a program, so Hector, his first year, he was 0-11. John takes over a program that was a doormat in the WCC. And now he's built it into a perennial power. They're making the finals in Gulf Shores. That was their first final. And so you have a lot of coaches. It's cool to see the coaches who have been at programs for a long time. I got the Florida State Seminole head on my shirt right here, Brooke Niles. This was her 10th year. We took a 5th. Technically, we lost in the quarterfinals to UCLA. She's built a perennial program there. Hector's been at TCU for 9 years now, building a huge program. You look at Jenny Johnson-Jordan. She's just in her 2nd or 3rd year as the head coach, I think, at UCLA, but she was the assistant long time before that. Dane Blanton, he's been the longtime coach at USC and was a volunteer before he took over the head coach. And you look at the coaches who have stayed at their programs for a long time, there's some stability there. And you see these perennial powers, and it's fun to see the new ones pop up. Mentioned last week, Boise State, my buddy Alex Bernardus, doing great things up there. You see UNF, they popped in, they won their conference, took down Stetson. They came back to the NCAA Championships. So if you missed it on ESPN, I can't recommend you mark that on your calendar for next year because it's a tremendous event. And again, a big congratulations to Hector Gutierrez. And the theme from that final that I think viewers could take note of, and I think Madison Fitzpatrick, Holly McPeak, Dawn Staley, they did a really nice job sort of painting all the storylines for you guys, is that you had the two teams with the most foreign players. You had 10 international countries represented outside of the United States in that final, and you had the oldest teams. So Hector is going to lose a lot from this team. I have no doubt he'll reload, and John is going to lose a lot from this team. I have no doubt that he'll reload and start developing some talent. But I think that it's a message to the world and to federations around the globe that the NCAA is just a talent-producing pipeline. And I think schools are going to be opening up their doors. Wait till you see the roster that Texas is going to put together next year. It's going to be a lot of international kids. And the NCAA just continues shifting and changing with the transfer portal, with the international recruiting. And it'll be fun to follow. But this will be kind of the last bit of NCAA news that you guys get for a while. I think, let us know what you thought of SANDCAST U. I thought Madison did a wonderful job this season. I think I know the numbers weren't great, but I think it's important to cover the sport as we would anything else. And I think Madison did an awesome job. I would like to experiment with her covering indoor as well, because that's just a massive market still in the volleyball world. So let us know what you guys thought of Madison and SANDCAST U, and if you want more of that content. But I do want to give out some SANDCAST awards, so to speak, for the end of the year on the NCAA. So every year the AVCA gives out top flight awards for each court. So I think court one, best court one in the country, Daniela Alvarez and Tanya Moreno of TCU. No question, Daniela would have been my player of the year. She was also the AVCA player of the year. I thought the best court two in the country was Perry Brennan and Natalie Myskowski of UCLA. Watched our own girls battle against them 3 times this season, fell short 3 times. It's been a blast watching Perry. Again, the first time I met Perry was at a Norseca in Mexico when she was a junior in high school. And now she is as legit as it gets. And if she chooses to pursue beach professionally, I think she has a super bright future. Court 3, again, right back to TCU. Alanis Navas from Puerto Rico, a fiery little ball control thing. She is awesome, and a young freshman who I think that's going to be the new centerpiece around which TCU's future rosters are built is Sofia Izuzquiza. She's 6'4", freshman with a bullet serve, played phenomenal. They put together a huge win. I think they won. I want to say that they won every single match they played in Gulf Shores, and she's just a freshman. So I think that that's going to be sort of the next Daniela that Hector's going to be constructing his rosters around. Court 4 goes to, who guessed it, TCU. Angelina Camille from Ukraine and Ana Vergara from Spain. They were tremendous, and I thought going into it that whoever won Court 4 in that NCAA championship was going to win, because I thought TCU would have had the ones they did. I thought LMU would have had the 2s they did. I thought TCU would have had the 3s they did, and I thought LMU's 5s, who I'm going to get to in a second, they were pretty much a lock to win. And so to me, whoever won the 4s won. That went to TCU in a pretty tight battle. I want to say it was 21-19, 21-19. So big win for them. I thought they all but sealed it. Obviously, you still had to get your other courts to handle their business. Still needed Danny and Tanya to take care of it on Court 1. But they won that Court 4. To me, that sealed it. And then the best Court 5 in the country, I think, was Julie Paletti, the Paraguayan Olympian. She is awesome. Fiery, spunky, great competitor, great player. And she's partnered with a freshman who I still don't know if she's right-handed or left-handed. That's how ambidextrous she is, Tannen Rosenthal. And that'll be a good young piece for John Mayer to build his team around. They were phenomenal. They were as much of a lock as you can get in the NCAA for a win on Court 5. As for the coaches of the year, so John Mayer won Coach of the Year. Big congrats to him. A lot of history made for LMU. If you're a listener of this podcast regularly, you'll know that my admiration for John knows no bounds. He's sort of who I look to as my coaching mentor and North Star. So big congrats to him. I think in contention for that would have been Andrew Fuller over at Stanford. They tied their single season wins record. They won the conference championship for the first time in school history. I thought that they had a tremendous season, and they'll be bringing back a lot to build around. And then I thought Stein Metzger. I mean, you get Texas in just the fledgling stages, and not only does he win the CCSA conference, not only does he make the NCAAs, he wins his first round, holding off an upset from Cal, where they had to come back from 9-4 down in the third set on court 2. And shout out to Emma Grace Robertson and Katie Hashman on court 2. You come back down from that, it's impressive. And Katie comes back, huge bombing serve to seal it at the end. So I thought Stein, he was probably in contention for Coach of the Year. It's hard to build a program this fast. I think Texas everyone knew it was a matter of time before they would be elite. I think that this is a little bit faster than anyone could have planned for. And they're going to be one of the top teams next year with a lot of the recruits they have coming in. The assistant, I don't know how the assistant Coach of the Year is actually measured, but Jose Loiola, who I love, used to coach me and Tim Brewster, and then coached me and a couple other guys. I would pop in with Triborn and Trevor Crabb a lot when they practiced, and Jose was running it. He was the assistant, AVCA Assistant Coach of the Year. No idea how the voting's done for that. I think he's deservedly so. UCLA was number 1 in the country, probably for more weeks than any other team this year. And I think my pick, I would have put Billy Allen up there. Stanford assistant coach, he comes in and Stanford starts doing a lot of things that they'd never done before. You could say correlation versus causation. But I think the Billy probably would have been in contention. And of course, Angie Akers over at Texas. Again, it's kind of same reasoning for Stein, is that you get a program in its first couple years and already you're competing. You're making the quarterfinals of the NCAA Championship. So I thought Billy added a lot of value to Stanford, adds a lot of value to Stanford. I think Angie, with her connections internationally, having been a coach for the Dutch national team for more than half a decade, she's bringing great things to Texas. And so it's fun. It's fun to be a part of this landscape, of this ecosystem. And it's kind of a volatile time in NCAA beach volleyball as far as the ecosystem. It's a volatile time in the NCAA as a whole. So there's a settlement passed where schools can now begin sharing revenue up to $21 million with their athletes. And so in response to that, you have schools cutting programs to save costs. And so a couple weeks ago, you had Cal Poly cut its swim and dive program. Then you have last week's GCU cuts its men's indoor program. And then shortly after that, Utah, after the best regular season it had ever had, it cuts its beach program. And I think it's sad, and I think it's just the tip of the iceberg, because schools are trying to figure this out. And I saw a lot of uproar, of course, on social media about it, and people are upset, reasonably so. But I don't know what the solution is. Now, I'm surprised that Utah would have cut its beach program. Utah football school, right? It has a big revenue-producing program that sort of subsidizes a lot of the other athletics programs. But beach is, I would think, got to be one of the cheapest sports a school can run, and it's a Title IX dream in terms of getting scholarships for women. And so that's kind of 2 big check marks you want your sport to check off. So I was really surprised to see Utah cut its beach program, of all things. Wasn't shocked to see GCU cut its men's indoor program, because it doesn't really offer many Title IX benefits, got a relatively big roster, and there's no revenue potential being brought in, really. So I don't know what the solution is, and a lot of the uproar on social media is just, GCU should be ashamed. This is appalling. It's embarrassing. Stanford went through the same thing during COVID, where they cut the men's indoor program, had a lot of donor backing. They sort of resuscitated it. I don't know if GCU is going to have that kind of donor backing that Stanford did, and I don't know what the solutions are, where schools are going to have to figure it out. It's probably going to take around a decade for schools to really iron out how they're going to navigate this new landscape of NIL and paying athletes and trying to keep all the other programs going. But I don't think that this is the last of it. I think this is kind of just the beginning. And I remember one of my favorite writers at The Athletic, Stuart Mandel, who said, no, I don't think programs are going to be cut. I could see this going all the way down the line, all the way across the country. It's just a matter of what programs and when. But schools are also Moving on from certain coaches, Hawaii head coach Evan Silberstein, he's been there for more than a decade. Hawaii has its first losing season since it became an NCAA sport. He's out. They chose not to renew his contract, and then just learned yesterday that South Carolina's longtime, its only head coach it's ever had, Moritz. South Carolina had a losing season this year, and he's out. And so the NCAA landscape, man, it is moving and churning. But that's it for the NCAA news. That's it for our season. I'll still be rocking my Seminole head stuff. Don't you worry. Congrats to Hector. Congrats to John. Congrats to everyone who had a big season this year. I'm excited to see what happens next year in Gulf Shores. Quick coffee break. All right, we are going to move on. So as I mentioned at the beginning, the NCAA season ends. Professional season begins. Spring ends, we go into summer. Beach volleyball is a summer sport, and this week's a huge one. So we have the AVP, the final AVP qualifier in Huntington Beach, where it's a pseudo qualifier and a heritage event as well. And so again, I'm just going to give you guys a reminder how this has worked. You got 3 events all in Huntington Beach. You had the first qualifier 4 weeks ago on April 12th weekend. Then you had the second qualifier. That was 2 weeks ago, April 26th. And now you have the Heritage event in Huntington Beach. It is your best 2 out of those 3 finishes. One of those finishes has to come from this weekend's tournament in Huntington Beach. And so you got Jaden Whitmarsh and Devin Newberry. They're sitting on a second, technically tied with Abby Van Winkle and Savvy Semo in the driver's seat for points. But they're in a tough spot because they are in the qualifiers. So now they have to go out of a single elimination qualifier, come in, play a top seed in what is a single elimination heritage event, and you need probably at least a 5th to put yourself in contention to get that one of the 2 league spots left available. So you have 6 spots of the league sealed up. You got 2 spots available the teams are fighting for this weekend. Jaden and Devin, while they're sitting on a second, they got a long road to climb. Savvy Semo, Abby Van Winkle, they're sitting in the driver's seat. As far as points go, they're also sitting on a second. But nipping at their heels, you got a lady named Kelly Chang and Molly Shaw. They're sitting on a 3rd. You got Therese Cann and Megan Kraft also sitting on a 3rd. And then you got a host of other teams sitting in 5ths. But I think that it really comes down to those 4 teams. I can't imagine a world in which someone outside of those 4 teams claims one of those top 2 spots. I think the odds would say that it'll be Kelly Chang and Molly Shaw and Megan Kraft and Therese Cannon. But I would put Abby and Savvy as basically a coin flip with Therese and Meg. And it could come down to one of them playing one another to get into that last spot. So if a new team wins, they lock in that spot. So Kelly and Molly, most likely of all those teams mentioned to win. Therese and Meg, probably about tied odds-wise to win alongside Kelly and Molly. But then you got Kristen and Taryn, they're back. Mel and Brandy, they're back. And so it's a loaded field. And so that those first 2 rounds, that's going to be what decides who gets into the league to me. Because you'll have 4 semifinalists. I think if you make the semifinals, you're in good shape. And so the women's side kind of comes down to those 4 teams to me. If someone else gets it, I'd be surprised, and I fully admit that I'm wrong. As for the men have a little bit more teams in the mix, as you could say. So again, you got 6 spots sealed up. The last 2 spots coming down to points. And so Sean Cook, Brian Miller, they're in the driver's seat. And I said on the last episode, the best thing that they can hope for is a good finish, and a lot of the other teams behind them to lose. And someone's like, well, the best thing they could hope for is just a win. Correct. Stand corrected. That Sean and Brian, make 2 straight finals in those single elimination qualifiers. You could do it again and win the whole dang thing, but you got to navigate now teams who are back that weren't playing in those qualifiers. So Andy Benish, Miles Partain, they're in it. You got Chase Budinger and Miles Evans, they're in it. You got Taylor Crabb and my favorite team, Billy Allen, they're in it. I'm guessing Taylor Sanders still in Indonesia filling out his indoor contract there. And so Tay and Billy coming off a big Santa Cruz CBVA win, coming in hot into this AVP qualifier. But so you got Sean and Brian sitting on a second, and then you got a host of teams sitting on 3rds, Cody Caldwell and Ryan Wilcox. They're sitting on a 3rd place finish, or second. Actually, let me bring up the standings. I want to make sure I get everything right here. So you got Cody Caldwell and Ryan Wilcox. They're sitting on a second place finish. Avery Drost, Wyatt Harrison, they're sitting on a correction. They're both sitting on third place finishes. Troy Field and Theo Brunner, they're sitting on a fifth. Tri Bourne, Evan Corey on a fifth. Tim Baumgren, Paul Lotman on a fifth. Tim Brewster, Ryan Ierna on a fifth as well. Now, as for the entry list, I would have to give the big edge to, so Sean and Brian, big driver's seat. Cody and Ryan, main draw, driver's seat. Tim Baumgren, Paul Lotman, driver's seat. Troy Field, Theo Brunner, also in the driver's seat. Tri and Evan, they're in there. So Ryan and Tim, similar spot as Jaden and Devin, but worse because they have to come out of the qualifier and then they have to have a huge finish for that. Meanwhile, all the other teams, all those in fifth, like Ryan and Cody are actually seated ahead of Evan and Tri, and seated ahead of Brian and Sean, and seated ahead of Avery and Wyatt. And so it's going to be like big theater. That first round is going to knock a lot of teams out of the AVP League, and that second round is pretty much going to seal a lot of teams in the AVP League. So it's funny that the round of 16 and quarterfinals are going to be the two most intense rounds that you're going to see on the AVP. No one is quite out of it yet. And so that's where we stand for the AVP. And then the league will start up a couple weeks after the Huntington Beach Heritage event this weekend. Moving on to Volleyball World, all is quiet sort of on the international front. We are sticking with the Elite 16 format that we have. There's been a lot of chatter about testing rules changes. This is when Volleyball World tests rules changes. They've traditionally done it. They tested the 4-touch rule, similar to indoor back at The Hague. I want to say that was when April Ross and Alex Kleinman won their first event, and the players hated it, and they said, let's never do it again. And the FIVB listened, and so they're testing out no doubles at some point. Don't get mad at me. I'm just the messenger. I don't like it either, but they're testing out no doubles later this year. I want to say that they're testing that in Ostrava and Stad. I will be in person in Ostrava back on the mic, and they're testing out having coaches in the box, which I think that should stay. I don't really understand why you can't have coaches. I know that potential cheating, because you could have a coach in the box, you could have a coach on this end of the stands, this end of the stands, giving you blocking signals, whatever. Maybe it would happen, I don't know. But I think having coaching in the box just makes sense, and they're going to test that one out. So of those rules changes, I hope that we keep doubles. I hope that we keep hand setting a skill. I know that it leaves subjective judgment in for the refs, and a lot of people would point to, well, indoor took away really strict hands rules, and look how big that game's got. I think that's, again, I mentioned correlation versus causation. I think that's part of it. But I'm hoping that rule gets rioted to the degree that the 4-touch off the block rule did back in The Hague a handful of years ago before the Tokyo Olympics. And I hope that the coach in the box stays, because that just makes sense. And so just be ready. Be ready for new rules to be tested out. The formats are going to stay the same. Volleyball World is just trying to get everything dialed, all the new formats set before the LA Olympic quad begins, because once the qualification begins, you can't change anything. Everything has to stay the same. And so this is their sort of experimental year and a half that they get to do. The next event on the Volleyball World calendar is the Xiamen Challenge. That'll come the week after Huntington Beach. And then it gets a little bit busier from there. It goes Xiamen, and then it'll go to Ostrava. May will be a little bit more, June will be a little bit more relaxed. Then you got Stad in July, and then it starts to pick up quite a bit in August. You got back-to-back Hamburg and Montreal. September, you got back-to-back elites in Brazil. Going to Cape Town in October, Doha, November. Boom, we got World Champs in November. And as I mentioned on last week's podcast, we're going to cover World Champs and that race no different than we did Paris, because I think we make too big of a deal out of the Olympics and not a big enough deal out of events like World Champs, which are harder to win. It's a better event than the Olympics. And so I want to start building those up in between the 4 years, because I don't think we can wait to build this sport. We get 2 weeks every 4 years, and then we crash again. And I think I'm going to do a whole podcast on how I think the Olympics has sort of broken beach volleyball, but that's to come later in the summer. Last bit of news from the volleyball world as a whole is that April Ross has left her post as the head coach at El Camino College to take on the head, I don't even know what to describe it, the head coaching position at USA Volleyball, where she will oversee basically every professional national team who's on the national team. So you got 12 players for the men, 12 players for the women, and then under that you have a developmental system. That dev system is overseen by Scott Davenport. He just hired Chris Flood as his assistant. And so April, they did this role before with Tyler Hildebrand. It went decently well, where I think that he sort of coached the coaches, mentored the athletes a little bit, wasn't too much in the weeds and in the minutia. And so I think that April's going to have a similar role where she's sort of overseeing everything, helping the coaches with what they can implement in their practices, how they can make their teams better, mentoring the athletes, being a resource. And so I'm excited for April. I'm excited for USA. She said if this role ever came up, it's kind of a dream job. So she has settled into her post-playing career quite well. Congrats to her. And I'll actually be coaching with her next week in the South Bay. We'll be at Manhattan Beach coaching the men's beach national development team. So it'll be fun to get to learn from April. Assistant coach, I'll be under April and under Alvaro Fio. So I can't think of a better opportunity to learn from two of the greats. So I'll be back out in California next week, actually hoping to get a couple podcasts done. I'll be commentating Xiamen, commentating Ostrava. So congrats again to Hector Gutierrez on his NCAA Championship win, and everyone better be tuning in to Huntington Beach because it is going to be exciting. That's all for now. Shoot.